I'm Camille Atwood, 30 years old, and last week my father called me crying. That might not sound shocking to some people, but in my family, Richard Atwood did not cry. He gave orders. He cleared his throat. He stared across dinner tables until people changed their minds just to make the room comfortable again. I had seen that man stand through funerals, layoffs, family emergencies, and one very dramatic Thanksgiving, when my uncle tried to carve the turkey with an electric knife that sounded like a lawnmower. Not one tear. So when I heard his voice break on the phone, I knew something had shifted. He needed me. Funny how that works, isn't it? People can forget your phone number for years. But the minute life corners them, suddenly, they remember every digit. Before I tell you what I said to him, I need to take you back 2 years. To the morning, my life split cleanly in half. Back then, I was living in Somerville, Massachusetts, in a one-bedroom apartment that was not fancy but was mine. The kitchen was small enough that if I opened the fridge and the oven at the same time, I had to stand sideways like I was solving a puzzle. I had one big window in the living room, a tired gray couch, and a monstera plant I had somehow kept alive for 3 years. That plant had better survival skills than some people I knew. I worked as a senior graphic designer at a mid-sized agency in Boston. It was one of those offices with exposed brick walls, too many succulents, and an espresso machine that cost more than my first car. People wore sneakers that looked casual, but cost $400. Everybody said circle back and brand story, so often I sometimes wondered if we were legally required to. But I loved the work. I really did. I had started there as an intern and clawed my way up over 5 years. No family connections. No secret trust fund. No father making phone calls for me. Just late nights. Bad coffee. Client revisions. And the kind of stubbornness you develop when nobody expects much from you. That Wednesday began like any other. I got up at 6:30. Made coffee. Checked my email. Watered the monstera. And got dressed in a navy blazer because we had a client presentation that afternoon. The client was a fintech startup, which meant they had money, urgency, and a logo they described as almost there every time they rejected it. By noon, I was sitting at my desk with my laptop open, headphones on, Slack notifications popping up every few seconds. My coffee had gone cold beside me because I was deep in that strange designer trance where you forget time exists and start caring way too much about the spacing between 2 letters. Then my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar. Normally, I would have ignored it. Unknown numbers usually meant spam, surveys, or some cheerful voice telling me my car warranty had expired. Even though I did not own a car worth protecting that much. But something made me answer. Hello? Miss Atwood? This is Dr. Patterson's office. The room around me seemed to quiet down, even though nothing actually changed. Yes, I said. This is Camille. We have your biopsy results. Doctor Patterson would like you to come in tomorrow morning. Can you be here at 8? I remember the exact feeling of my hand tightening around the phone. I remember looking at my coffee cup and thinking it was lukewarm because I had forgotten about it for almost an hour. I remember the light hitting the glass wall of the conference room in front of me. Everything looked normal, which felt rude. The world should have had the decency to tilt a little. Can you tell me anything over the phone? I asked. I'm sorry, the nurse said gently. Dr. Patterson will go over everything with you tomorrow. That sentence did not comfort me. Doctors do not call you into the office early in the morning because everything is wonderful. Nobody says, please come in at 8, just to hand you a gold star and tell you your cells are behaving nicely. I said I would be there. Then I hung up and stared at my screen. The logo in front of me blurred. Someone across the office laughed at something, and I wanted to stand up and ask how they could possibly laugh when I had just been handed a door. I did not want to open, but I did what I had always done. I kept working. That is what being the dependable daughter teaches you. Smile. Finish the task. Don't make a scene. Don't need too much. By dinner that night, I could barely swallow. I heated soup and let it sit untouched on the counter. I walked from my bedroom to the living room and back again. Like pacing could change lab results. I thought about calling my mother, but I stopped myself. She had been busy all month with Derek's wedding plans, and I already knew how that conversation would go. Oh, sweetie, try not to worry. By the way, do you think ivory napkins look too yellow? So I did not call. The next morning, I drove to the hospital with both hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles hurt. Boston traffic was its usual charming self, which is to say everyone behaved like they were personally late to perform surgery. I got there early anyway and sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, trying to convince myself to get out of the car. Dr. Patterson's office was on the third floor. The waiting room had pale blue chairs, old magazines, and a fake peace lily in the corner that looked healthier than I felt. A woman across from me was knitting. A man beside her was reading something on his phone. People were just sitting there, living normal lives in a place where normal lives sometimes ended. When the nurse called my name, my legs felt strange under me. Dr. Patterson did not waste time. I respected her for that later. In the moment, I hated every word. Camille, she said, sitting across from me with my chart open in front of her. The biopsy shows stage 3 breast cancer. Stage 3. 2 words. 1 sentence. A whole life rearranged. She kept talking. Aggressive tumor. Immediate treatment. Chemotherapy. Surgery discussions later. More scans. More appointments. Akaritim. Aplan. I heard the words, but they came from far away, like I was underwater. I was 28 years old. I had a rent payment. A job? A plant. Student loans. A favorite coffee shop. And a half-finished design campaign waiting on my laptop. I did not have room for cancer. Nobody had asked my schedule. Camille? Doctor, Patterson said. I blinked. I'm sorry. I whispered. I'm here. Do you have someone who can drive you home? That question almost broke me. Someone. I thought about my friend Harper. But back then, Harper was more of an acquaintance I saw sometimes through hospital volunteer events and mutual friends. My coworkers were friendly, but not people I wanted to call while my face was falling apart. And then, before I could stop myself, I said the thing a daughter says when the ground disappears under her. I'll call my dad. Even after everything, I still believed there were certain emergencies big enough to wake up. Love. I walked out of the office and found a bench in the hallway. People moved past me in both directions. Nurses in sneakers. Patients with folders. A little boy holding his grandmother's hand. The whole hospital smelled like disinfectant and coffee. My hands shook as I opened my contacts. Dad? I stared at the name for a second before tapping it. The phone rang twice. Camille? He said. What is it? I'm in the middle of something. Not good morning. Not, is everything okay? Just irritation? Already loaded and waiting. Dad, I said. And my voice cracked before I even got the words out. I just left the doctor. There was a pause. What doctor? The biopsy. I got the results. I pressed my free hand against my mouth, trying to steady myself. I have cancer. Stage 3. Silence. I waited for the shock. The concern. The chair scraping back. The sudden change in his voice. I waited for my father. In the background, I heard my mother say something. Maybe she asked who it was. Maybe she was standing in their kitchen with a cup of coffee, surrounded by wedding magazines and fabric samples. Dad? I said. Did you hear me? He exhaled. Slow and heavy. Like I had brought him an inconvenience, instead of a diagnosis. Camille. Listen, he said. Your mother and I can't deal with this right now. For a second, I truly thought I had misheard him. What? Derek's wedding is in 4 months, he continued. There is a lot going on. Deposits. Guest lists. The venue. Your mother is overwhelmed. We can't take on another crisis right now. Another crisis? Like I had called because my dishwasher was leaking. Dad, I said, crying now. I have cancer. I understand that, he said, though he sounded like he understood nothing. But you've always been independent. You're strong. You'll figure it out. The hallway tilted a little. A nurse walked by and glanced at me with the soft, practiced sympathy of someone who had seen strangers break before. "I'm scared," I whispered. He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "I have to go. Derek and Megan are coming over to finalize the venue deposit." The line went dead. I kept the phone pressed to my ear, even after the call ended. I do not know how long I sat there before I moved. It might have been 10 minutes. It might have been an hour. Time does strange things. When someone you love makes it clear that your pain is poorly timed. People kept walking past. Doctors, nurses, families. Nobody stopped. To them, I was just a woman on a bench, crying into a dead phone call. I wanted to call him back. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him what kind of father hears stage 3 cancer and answers with wedding deposit. But I did not call back. Instead, I looked at the call log. 8:47 in the morning. 2 minutes and 31 seconds. I took a screenshot. I did not know then how important that screenshot would become. I only knew I needed proof that it had happened. Proof that I had not imagined the coldness in his voice. Proof that one day, when someone tried to tell me I was exaggerating, I could look at the record and remember the truth. I created a folder on my phone. I named it Family. Then I sat on that hospital bench, wiped my face with the sleeve of my blazer, and made myself stand up, because apparently, I was strong. Apparently, I would figure it out. I walked out of that hospital with my diagnosis in one hand, and my father's silence sitting on my chest like unpaid debt. By the time I reached my car, I had stopped crying. Not because I felt better. I just hit that strange place where your body says, "That is enough water for today." "Mom, we are closing the factory." I sat behind the wheel, staring at the dashboard, trying to understand how a person could be told her body was trying to kill her and still worry about bothering her family. That was the Atwood way. We did not need things. We did not make things difficult. We did not interrupt whatever Richard Atwood had decided was important. And in our family, Derek was always important. Derek was my younger brother by 2 years. Though you would never know it from how our parents treated him. He was the son. The promise. The one who carried the Atwood name like it came with a tiny parade. I was the daughter. Which in my father's mind meant I was supposed to be pleasant, useful, responsible, and grateful for whatever attention happened to spill over. When we were kids, Derek could sneeze, and my mother would act like she had just witnessed a medical emergency on live television. I could have a fever and still be expected to set the table. I am not saying they never fed me or clothed me. They did. We had a nice house in Newton, Massachusetts, with black shutters, polished hardwood floors, and a dining room table nobody was allowed to touch unless company was coming. From the outside, we looked like a good family. Christmas cards, church on Easter, matching sweaters when my mother got ambitious. The full American suburban brochure. But inside that house, love had a seating chart. And my name was always somewhere near the back. Derek got patience. I got expectations. When Derek struggled with math in middle school, my father hired a private tutor within a week. When I brought home a report card with straight A's, he nodded and said, "Good. Keep it up." That was it. No celebration. No dinner out. No proud phone calls to relatives. Just a performance review from a man who had apparently confused fatherhood with middle management. When Derek made the varsity baseball team, my parents showed up to every game. My father bought a folding chair with a cup holder and acted like he was scouting for the Red Sox. When I won a regional art competition, my mother forgot the ceremony because she was driving Derek to practice. She apologized later. "Well," she said, "you know how busy things get?" That was as close to an apology as my mother usually came. She could glide past responsibility like a figure skater in pearls. By high school, I understood the system. Derek was allowed to need. I was expected to manage. If Derek forgot a deadline, someone reminded him. If I forgot one, I was careless. If Derek talked back, he was stressed. If I raised my voice, I was dramatic. If Derek wanted something, it was discussed. If I wanted something, it was weighed. questioned, and usually delayed until I stopped asking. My father called it character building. I called it learning not to reach for empty shelves. The biggest lesson came when college applications rolled around. I wanted to go to Rhode Island School of Design. I had worked on my portfolio for 2 years. I stayed up late sketching, revising, building layouts, teaching myself software on an old laptop that overheated so badly, I had to keep a fan pointed at it. I got accepted. Too. I still remember holding the letter in my hands, feeling like the world had opened a door just wide enough for me to slip through. My father looked at the tuition number and closed that door with one sentence. Girls do not need expensive degrees to be successful. I stared at him across the kitchen table. Dad, it's one of the best design schools in the country. And you can study design at a state school? He said. Same result. Less debt. Less debt for him. He meant. Because 2 years later, when Derek got into Boston College, my father wrote the check without blinking. No speech about character. No lecture about practicality. No concern about whether boys needed expensive degrees. Derek needed opportunity. I needed to be reasonable. So I went to a state school and took out loans. A lot of loans. $87,000 by the time I graduated. I worked part-time in the campus print shop, designed flyers for student groups, and ate enough instant noodles to qualify as a food safety experiment. Derek went to football games, joined a fraternity, and called home when he needed spending money. Guess who got praised for being ambitious? When Derek graduated, my parents threw him a party in the backyard. White tent, catered food. A bartender, my mother claimed, was just for the adults, even though half Derek's friends treated it like happy hour with better landscaping. My father gave a toast about legacy and pride and how Derek was becoming the man he always knew he would be. When I graduated, my mother mailed me a card with a grocery store gift certificate inside. $50. I used it, because pride does not buy eggs. Years later, when I got promoted to senior graphic designer, I called my mother. I was proud. Not loud proud. Not bragging proud. Just that quiet feeling that maybe all the late nights had meant something. That's nice. Sweetie, she said. Can I call you back? Megan is coming over and we're looking at venues. Megan. Derek had proposed the month before to Megan Hollis, a woman with perfect blonde highlights, a tidy job in human resources, and the kind of smile that made older relatives say, "She's such a nice girl," after speaking to her for 12 seconds. To be fair, Megan was not cruel. She was polite. She sent thank you notes. She remembered birthdays. She wore beige in a way that looked intentional. I did not dislike her. I just disliked what her arrival did to my family, which was turn the Derek spotlight into a full stadium event. The wedding was set for October, 4 months after my diagnosis. By the time I called my father from that hospital hallway, the wedding had already taken over everything. Every family conversation had become a planning meeting. Every dinner became a debate about flowers, seating charts, invitation fond, and whether the cocktail hour needed a raw bar, arav bar. Meanwhile, I was sitting in oncology appointments, learning words like port placement, neutropenia, infusion schedule, and survival rate. But apparently, oysters had seniority. My mother had a Pinterest board with hundreds of wedding ideas. She sent me screenshots of centerpieces while I was waiting for blood work. She asked whether blush pink looked too young for an October wedding while I was reading pamphlets about chemotherapy side effects. And my father, who had once told me my college dreams were too expensive, suddenly discovered generosity when it came to Derek. He talked about the wedding like it was a national infrastructure project. The venue deposit is due Friday. The photographer is worth the money. It's his only wedding. Camille. That line always got me. As if my life came with unlimited reruns. I did not tell them how much that hurt. Back then, I still believed if I made myself easier to love, eventually they would notice. So I answered the flower questions. I approved the invitation colors. I laughed politely when my mother complained that planning a wedding was the most stressful thing a family can go through. I nearly choked on my coffee when she said that. The most stressful thing. Right. Somewhere out there, My biopsy results were waving politely from the corner. After my diagnosis, I waited for my parents to call back. I thought maybe my father had panicked. Maybe he would speak to my mother, calm down, and realize what he had done. Maybe the next call would be different. It did come later that evening. From my mother. For one stupid second. I thought she was calling to ask about the cancer. Camille? Honey, she said, breathless. Quick question. Do you think the bridesmaids should wear dusty rose or sage green? I sat on the edge of my bed with the hospital folder beside me. Inside were treatment schedules, scan orders, medication lists, and a printed page titled, What to Expect During Chemotherapy. What? I asked. The bridesmaids. She repeated. Megan likes dusty rose, but I'm worried it's too spring. Your father thinks sage looks more elegant. I closed my eyes. Mom, did Dad tell you? A pause. Tell me what? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes life is so insulting, it circles back around and becomes impressive. My biopsy results came back. I have stage 3 breast cancer. Silence. Then a small inhale. Oh, Camille. There it was. The soft voice. The mother voice. For half a second, I leaned toward it like a starving person smelling bread. Then she said, Well, we'll have to stay positive. You're young. Young people bounce back. Bounce back. Like I had twisted an ankle at a company softball game. The doctor wants to start treatment right away. I said, Of course. Of course. We'll talk more soon. In the background, I heard papers rustling. I'm just in the middle of finalizing the guest list with Megan. But send me the details. All right? Send me the details. Not, I'm coming over. Not, do you need me? Not, I am your mother, and I will be there. Just send me the details. Like I was forwarding a receipt. I hung up and sat there in my quiet apartment. The Monstera plant leaned toward the window. Completely unbothered. My soup sat cold on the counter. My phone rested in my lap. Full of people who technically shared my blood, and somehow felt farther away than strangers. That night, I opened the hospital folder and wrote down every appointment in a notebook. If my family could organize a wedding down to napkin texture, I could organize my survival. The next morning, my mother texted me a photo of 2 fabric swatches. Dusty rose or sage? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back. Sage is nice, because I had stage 3 cancer. And God forbid I be difficult. The notebook became my first caregiver. Which sounds sad, until you remember it was more dependable than most of my relatives. I wrote down everything Dr. Patterson's office gave me. Blood work dates, scan times, medication instructions, emergency numbers, what to eat before chemo, what not to eat before chemo, when to call if I had a fever, how to flush the port, which side effects were normal and which ones meant I needed to stop pretending I was fine and get help. There is a strange amount of paperwork involved in being terrified. My first chemotherapy appointment was on a Monday morning. I remember that because the rest of Boston was doing normal Monday things. People were standing in line for coffee, honking at traffic, complaining about meetings, and rushing into office buildings with laptop bags slung over their shoulders. I used to be one of those people. I used to think a bad Monday meant a client hated the font. That morning, I packed a tote bag like I was preparing for a very unpleasant day trip. Water bottle, crackers, peppermints, a phone charger, a cardigan, because hospitals are always cold. As if illness is not already rude enough. I also packed a paperback I never opened. Because apparently I thought I was going to sit there reading while poison entered my veins. Optimism is adorable when it is uninformed. I drove myself to the hospital. That part still makes people pause when I say it. They always ask, Nobody could take you? No, nobody offered. And I was still too proud, too embarrassed, and too freshly rejected to beg. The infusion center was on the 4th floor. It had wide windows, parlor walls, and rows of reclining chairs arranged with just enough privacy to pretend you were not all there for the same frightening reason. Each chair had an IV pole, a small television, a rolling tray, and a blanket folded across the armrest. It looked almost peaceful from a distance. Up close, it was a room full of people trying not to fall apart. A nurse named Rita checked me in. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, with kind eyes and reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain around her neck. She had the steady hands of someone who had done this thousands of times and still understood it was someone's first time. "Camille Atwood?" she asked. "That's me. First treatment?" I nodded. She gave me a soft smile. "All right, honey. We'll take it one step at a time." I was assigned to chair 7. I remember the number because I stared at it on the little laminated tag while Rita explained what would happen. Pre-meds first. Then, the chemotherapy drugs. Possible réaction. Call her if I felt tightness in my chest. Itching. Dizziness. Anything unusual. Everything felt unusual. She accessed my port, and I tried not to look. The needle going in did not hurt as much as I expected. But the idea of it hurt. The idea that my body now required access points, medications, and a schedule, just to keep going. Rita taped everything down and said, "Most people bring someone for the first one." I glanced around the room. She was right. In chair 3, a woman about my mother's age had her husband sitting beside her, holding her hand like it was his only job in the world. He kept adjusting her blanket and asking if she needed water. She kept telling him she was fine, but she smiled every time he asked. In chair 5, a teenage boy leaned back with headphones around his neck while his mother read aloud from a fantasy novel. She did voices for the characters. 2. Not good voices, but committed ones. That counts for something. In chair 9, an older man had a daughter who had brought soup in a thermos and kept reminding him to take small sips. And in chair 7, there was me. Just me. Tote bay. And a paperback that suddenly seemed ridiculous. "My family's busy," I told Rita, because apparently I was still protecting them from the truth. She did not argue. "Nurses hear more in what you do not say than most people hear in a full confession." "Well," she said gently, "you have us today." That almost did me in. The treatment took hours. The first drip made me sleepy. The next one made my mouth taste metallic, like I had been chewing pennies. Rita checked on me often. I answered emails from work because I did not know what else to do with my hands. My boss, Victor Reeves, had told me to take all the time I needed. But I still felt guilty. Cancer had not cured me of being an overachiever. It had just added nausea. Halfway through, I texted my mother, "Starting chemo today. I'm scared." I stared at the message after I sent it. 3 little words at the end. "I'm scared." Honest. Plain. Impossible to misunderstand. She did not respond. The hours dragged. My body felt heavy. Then cold. Then strangely disconnected from itself. Rita brought me crackers. I nibbled one, and immediately regretted it. The woman in chair 3 fell asleep while her husband watched over her. The teenage boy's mother kept reading. The older man's daughter helped him stand when he needed the restroom. I tried not to look. Not because I resented them. I did not. I was glad they had people. Truly. But watching love show up for other people while yours cannot be bothered is a special kind of loneliness. It sits right under the ribs. When the infusion finally ended, Rita gave me instructions for the next few days. Hydrate. Rest. Take the nausea medication before I needed it. Do not wait. Call if anything felt wrong. I nodded like a good patient. Then I drove home. That was a mistake. By the time I reached Somerville, my stomach had started turning. I pulled over twice, once near a gas station, and once in front of a closed dry cleaner. Gripping the steering wheel and breathing through waves of nausea, a man walking his dog glanced at me through the windshield. I gave him the tight little smile women give when they are trying not to vomit in public. Very dignified. Very inspirational. Put it on a poster. I made it upstairs to my apartment. Dropped my tote bag by the door. And barely reached the bathroom before I was sick. The nausea was not like a stomach bug. It was deeper. Meaner. Like my whole body had filed a complaint. I curled up on the tile floor with my cheek against a bath towel, because the tile was too cold and I was too weak to move. 6 hours after I sent my text, my mother replied, "Hang in there. Sweetie, I'm at the florist with Megan. Peonies or roses? What do you think?" I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. Because my brain kept rejecting it like it had to be some kind of clerical error. I was on the bathroom floor after chemotherapy. And my mother wanted flower advice. I could have told her the truth. I could have typed, "I am sick and scared and I need you." I could have sent a photo of the towel I was lying on. I could have called and made her hear what her daughter sounded like after the first round of chemo. Instead, I screenshotted the message. Then I typed back, "Roses are nice." That was the moment I realized I had started collecting evidence. Not because I had a plan. Not yet. But because some part of me understood that one day, they would rewrite this. They would say they did not know. They would say I never asked. They would say they would have helped, if only I had told them. So I kept proof. The next treatments blurred together, but each one left a mark. There were blood draws before dawn. Waiting rooms full of quiet fear. Insurance calls where I had to explain the same information to 3 different representatives. And pharmacy counters, where the price of medication made me laugh once, because crying would have taken too much energy. My hair started thinning after the second round. At first, it was subtle. A few extra strands in the shower drain. More on my pillow. More in my brush. I told myself it was not so bad. I wore hats. I changed my part. I avoided mirrors when the light was too honest. By the third round, there was no pretending. That was also when Harper Sullivan found me. She was a nurse practitioner who helped run a support program at the hospital. I had seen her before in the infusion center, moving from patient to patient with a clipboard and a calm, direct manner. She had curly red hair, pulled back in a ponytail, and the kind of eyes that made lying feel like too much work. She approached me while I was sitting in chair 7 again. "You're always alone," she said. I looked up from my phone. "I'm fine." "I didn't ask if you were fine." That caught me off guard. She smiled. Not pitying. Not fake. "I said you're always alone. My family is busy." "With what?" I should have brushed her off. I had been trained for that. Smile. Minimize. Change the subject. But chemo strips away your talent for polite nonsense. "My brother's wedding?" I said. Harper's face did not change much, but something in her eyes sharpened. "When is the wedding?" "October." "And your treatment runs through?" "November." "If everything stays on schedule." She nodded slowly. "That must feel pretty lonely." I looked down at the blanket over my lap. "It is what it is." "No," she said quietly. "It is what they are choosing." I did not answer. Because the truth? When someone finally says it out loud, I can feel less like comfort and more like a bruise being pressed. Harper sat with me for 20 minutes that day. She did not force advice on me. She did not tell me to forgive anyone. She told me about the hospital support group, about transportation resources, about meal programs for patients going through treatment, practical things, useful things, the kind of help that does not ask you to bleed first. Before she left, she said, "We keep visitor logs here. You know? Every patient, every visit. If you ever need copies for your records, you can request them." I frowned. Why would I need that? She gave me a look. I did not fully understand yet. Sometimes people need reminders of what really happened. 3 days later, I requested my first copy. There was not much to see. My name, dates, department, appointment records, visitor column. None. The word looked small on the page. It did not feel small. By round 4, I had stopped expecting anyone from my family to appear. Expectation takes energy. And chemo had already stolen most of mine. I made my own rides when I could not drive. I accepted help from Harper. I learned which crackers stayed down. I learned to sleep sitting up after treatment. I learned that nurses can become angels without making a big production out of it. I also learned that being alone is not always the worst thing. The worst thing is being abandoned by people who still expect to be called family. By the time October came around, I had learned how to stop looking at the door every time the elevator opened. That sounds small, but it was not. For the first few treatments, every time I heard footsteps near the infusion center, I looked up. I hated myself for it. But I did. Some foolish part of me kept thinking maybe my mother would appear with a tote bag and her Chanel perfume. Maybe my father would walk in stiff and awkward, not knowing what to say but trying anyway. Maybe Derek would show up with coffee and make some dumb joke about hospital parking. Nobody came, so I stopped looking. October was supposed to be the month of Derek's wedding. In my family, it had been treated less like a wedding and more like a royal transfer of power. Every conversation revolved around it. The venue, the flowers, the photographer, the seating chart, the rehearsal dinner, the signature cocktail. Because apparently 2 people cannot legally get married in Massachusetts unless someone names a drink after them. I knew the date by heart. October 15th. I also knew my treatment schedule by heart. Chemo had turned my calendar into a battlefield. Infusion days, recovery days, blood work days, days when I could work from home, days when I knew I would be useless and had to let myself be useless. Which was harder than it sounds when you were raised to treat rest like a moral failure. The wedding fell in one of my better windows. Not good. Exactly. Good had become a relative term. Good meant I could stand long enough to shower. Good meant I could eat toast and not immediately regret it. Good meant I could answer emails without forgetting what sentence I was in the middle of. But I was not flat on the bathroom floor. That counted. For a while, I thought maybe I would go. Not because anyone had made me feel wanted. They had not. I was not asked to be in the wedding party. Not a bridesmaid. Not a reader. Not even the person who lit a candle and then sat down before the real family came in. My role was unclear, which was very on brand for my life in the Atwood family. Still, I thought about attending. I imagined sitting near the back of the church, wearing a soft scarf over my thin hair, clapping when Derek and Megan walked out smiling. I imagined my mother spotting me, and maybe, just maybe, looking relieved. I imagined my father saying, "I'm glad you came," in that gruff way of his. Like kindness had to sneak out, wearing a disguise. I know. Hope can be embarrassing. Harper was the only person I admitted it to. We were sitting in the hospital cafeteria after one of my appointments. She had a salad. I had crackers and ginger ale, because my stomach had entered into a hostile negotiation with food. "You want to go?" she asked. "I don't know." I said, "Maybe? Do you feel well enough? Maybe for a few hours." That's not what I asked. I gave her a look. "You're very annoying for someone helping me. It's one of my gifts." I stirred my ginger ale with a straw. I think if I don't go, it becomes this big thing. Like I'm bitter. Or dramatic. Or punishing them. Harper leaned back in her chair. "Camille, you have cancer. You are allowed to miss a wedding." I know. But I did not know. Not really. In families like mine, the person who gets hurt is usually expected to manage everyone else's comfort around the injury. If I showed up sick, I might make people uncomfortable. If I stayed home, I might seem resentful. Either way, I was somehow responsible for the emotional weather. A few days before the wedding, my father called. His name lit up my phone while I was folding laundry in my apartment. I remember staring at it with my hand on a clean towel, feeling my chest tighten before I even answered. For one foolish second, I thought he was calling to ask if I needed a ride, or to check whether I was well enough to come, or maybe to say he had saved me a quiet seat near the aisle in case I needed to leave early. I answered, "Hey, Dad." "Camille," he said, "about the wedding." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "Yes? Your mother and I have been talking." That phrase had never once led to anything pleasant. In my family, "Your mother and I have been talking" usually meant a decision had been made without me, and my job was to accept it graciously. He cleared his throat. "We think it's best if you don't attend." I looked at the towel in my lap. White cotton, still warm from the dryer. "Oh, you understand?" he said quickly, which meant he did not want me to ask questions. "You've been through treatment. You look," he paused, "unwell." There it was, unwell. Such a polite word. So clean. So much easier than saying bald in patches. Underweight. Exhausted. Frightening. It's Derek's day, he continued. We don't want anything to take attention away from him and Megan. Anything. He meant me. Not my illness. Not the unfairness. Not the fact that his daughter was fighting for her life 4 months after he told her he could not deal with it. Just me. My body. My visible proof that something ugly existed outside the seating chart. I wouldn't make a scene. I said, I know that. No. I don't think you do. There was silence. My father was not used to me pushing back. To be honest. Neither was I. He sighed. Camille, don't make this harder than it needs to be. That almost made me laugh. I was the one with a port in my chest. Medical bills stacking on my counter. Hair coming out in handfuls. And a freezer full of meals donated by a hospital support program, because my family was too busy choosing cocktail napkins. But sure, I was making things hard. I understand. I said, and I did. I understood more clearly than I ever had. When we hung up, I did not cry right away. I sat there with the towel in my lap and felt something colder than sadness move through me. Sadness still wants something. Sadness still hopes. This was different. This was the quiet click of a door locking. I took a screenshot of the call log. Then I opened my folder. Family. By then, it already held more than it should have. My father's first call. My mother's flower messages. Missed calls. Chemo dates. Visitor logs. Texts that looked harmless if you did not know what was happening behind them. I added the screenshot. On October 15th, Derek got married without me. I spent the morning in bed because the previous treatment had left me weak and aching. My scalp hurt where my hair had thinned. My joints felt like they belonged to someone much older. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. Around noon, my mother texted a photo. The church looked beautiful. White flowers. Candles. Megan in a fitted gown with lace sleeves. Derek standing at the altar in a black tuxedo, smiling like a man who had never had to wonder whether he mattered. Mom's message said, "Wish you could have been here, sweetie." I stared at those words for a long time. Wish you could have been here. As if the weather had stopped me. As if I had been invited and simply could not make it. I typed 3 different replies and deleted them all. Finally, I wrote, "Hope it's a beautiful day." Because old habits do not die just because you do. The photos started appearing on Facebook that evening. I should not have looked. I knew that. But pain has a strange curiosity. It wants to see the full size of the wound. My mother posted an album first. The happiest day of our family's life. There they were. My parents standing beside Derek and Megan under a floral arch that probably cost more than one of my chemo copays. My father in a dark suit, beaming with a pride I had spent my whole life trying to earn. My mother in champagne silk, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Derek and Megan cutting a cake with 5 tiers. Guests laughing. Champagne glasses raised. A dance floor full of cousins. Neighbors. Family friends. 150 people celebrating the Atwood family. And no sign that I existed. Not one mention. Not one empty chair. Not one "we miss Camille." Nothing. I was not absent. I had been erased. I zoomed in on one photo. Because apparently I had not hurt myself enough yet. It showed a long table at the reception. My parents were seated near the center. Derek and Megan beside them. Aunt Linda was there. Uncle Paul. Cousins I had not seen in years. Everyone smiling. My chair was not empty. There was no chair. That was when I finally cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears sliding down my face while I sat alone in my apartment, wearing sweatpants and a knit cap. Looking at the happiest day of my family's life on a screen. Harper called around 9. "I saw the photos," she said. I wiped my face with my sleeve. That was fast. "Your mother tagged half of Massachusetts." I gave a small laugh. Though it came out rough. "Of course she did. You okay?" "No. Do you want me to come over?" I looked around my apartment. The folded laundry still sat in a basket. The sink had 2 mugs in it. My medication schedule was taped to the fridge. Everything about the place looked like a life being held together with paper clips. No, I said. But thank you. You sure? I think I need to feel this one. Harper was quiet for a moment. All right. But don't let their version become yours. What does that mean? It means they may act like you missed a wedding. But you know the truth. They excluded you because your illness made them uncomfortable. I looked back at the Facebook caption. The happiest day of our family's life? Yeah. I said, I know. After we hung up, I took screenshots. The caption. The photos. The comments from relatives saying what a beautiful family we were. Beautiful family. Perfect family. So much love in one room. So much love. Just not enough to cross a hospital hallway. I saved everything. Then I logged out of Facebook. For 6 months. I did not open it again. That night, I made myself tea and sat by the window with my monstera plant, which had somehow grown a new leaf. I touched the edge of it gently, amazed by its nerve. There it was, still reaching toward the light like nobody had told it. Life was unfair. I did not forgive them that night. I did not make peace with it. I did not rise above anything. I simply survived the day. Sometimes that is the victory nobody claps for. Derek had his wedding. My parents had their perfect pictures. My mother had her champagne silk and her hundreds of likes. My father had his proud toast. Probably something about family, loyalty, and showing up for the people you love. I am sure everyone nodded. People love a good speech when they are not the ones being lied about. And I had my folder, my screenshots, my visitor logs, my truth. The next morning, I woke up weak, angry, and still alive. At that point, still alive was enough. Being alive, I learned very quickly, came with a price tag. A few weeks after Derek's wedding, the medical bills started arriving in my mailbox like they had formed a committee. White envelopes, blue envelopes, thick envelopes with itemized statements inside. Hospital charges, lab charges, imaging charges, prescription charges, specialist charges. Some of them came from departments I did not even remember visiting, which was impressive, because I remembered almost everything about being afraid. At first, I stacked them on my kitchen counter and told myself I would deal with them later. Later lasted about 3 days. Then I came home from another appointment, saw the pile leaning against my coffee maker, and realized ignoring a medical bill does not make it disappear. It just sits there, gathering interest and judgment. So I made tea, opened my laptop, pulled out a notebook, and started sorting through the damage. My insurance covered a lot. I want to be fair about that. I had a decent plan through work, and my company had been kind enough not to treat my diagnosis like a scheduling inconvenience. Victor, my boss, had already told me I could work remotely whenever I needed and take medical leave without worrying about my position. Your job will be here, he said. That sentence had done more for me than most of my family's entire emotional contribution. But good insurance in America does not mean free. It means you get to be financially wounded in smaller, more confusing pieces. Deductibles, co-pays, out-of-network specialists, medications. My plan considered non-formulary, which is insurance language for good luck, sweetheart. A nausea prescription that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. A scan that was mostly covered, except for the part that apparently wanted to buy itself a vacation home. By the time I added everything together, I owed $47,000. I sat at my tiny kitchen table and stared at the number. $47,000. I said it out loud, just to see if it sounded less ridiculous in my own voice. It did not. That was more than my car was worth, more than I had in savings, more than any emergency fund I had managed to build while paying student loans, rent, utilities, insurance, and all the other little fees adulthood throws at you while smiling. I had always been careful with money, not because I was naturally disciplined, though I liked to pretend that was part of my charm. I was careful because nobody was coming to rescue me. I had learned that early. I budgeted. I cooked at home. I bought clothes on sale. I kept a spreadsheet because when you grow up with conditional support, control becomes its own kind of comfort. But no spreadsheet survives cancer without taking a few hits. I sold my car first. It was not fancy. Just a used Honda with a stubborn heater and a passenger window that made a grinding sound if you lowered it too far. But it was mine. I had bought it after my first real promotion. Letting it go felt like losing one more piece of normal life. The man who bought it barely looked at me. He checked the mileage, kicked one tire, like he had seen people do on television, and offered me less than I asked. I wanted to argue. Then I remembered I had a bill from the oncology pharmacy sitting on my counter, and pride got very quiet. I took the money. After that, I canceled everything that was not required for survival. Streaming subscriptions, gym membership, meal delivery, design software add-ons I used for freelance projects. I stopped getting coffee out. I started buying whatever groceries were on sale and pretending I had meant to eat that many lentils. I called billing offices and asked about payment plans. Some representatives were kind. Some sounded like I had personally inconvenienced them by developing a tumor. One woman told me, "We understand this is stressful," in the same tone you might use to discuss a delayed package. I laughed after that call. Not because anything was funny, because sometimes the alternative is screaming. And my neighbors had already been through enough with my blender phase. Still, the math did not work. No matter how I moved the numbers around, I came up short. That was when I did the thing I had promised myself I would never do again. I asked my father for help. I waited until a Friday evening because I knew he would be home. My mother usually made salmon on Fridays, and my father liked to sit in the den afterward with a glass of bourbon and the financial news on television, as if the stock market needed him personally supervising it. I typed the message, "Dad, I'm in trouble. The medical bills are more than I can handle. Could I borrow some money? I'll pay it back." I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the send button. The message looked too small for what it cost me. There was no way to fit humiliation into a text box. No way to explain how it felt to ask a man for help after he had told you he could not deal with your cancer because your brother had a venue deposit. I almost deleted it. Then I looked at the stack of bills beside me. I sounded it. For the next 2 hours, I checked my phone like it contained test results. I made soup. I did not eat it. I folded laundry. Badly. I watered the monstera twice, because apparently my anxiety had decided the plant was dehydrated. Finally, the phone buzzed. My father's reply was short. "Your mother and I just finished paying for Derek's wedding. We don't have extra right now. Have you looked into a personal loan? Your credit should be good enough." I read it once. Then I read it again. Then I turned the phone face down on the table and sat very still. There was no, "I'm sorry." No, "How much do you need?" No, "Let me see what we can do." No, "Are you okay?" Just a reminder that Derek's wedding had already claimed the family resources, followed by a helpful little suggestion that I go into debt for the privilege of staying alive. I picked up the phone again and read the message a third time. "Your credit should be good enough." That was my father. All right. Practical to the bone when someone else was bleeding. What made it worse was that I knew what they had spent. Derek had bragged about it to Aunt Linda before the wedding. Loud enough for half the family to hear. $80,000. He said it with a grin. Like the number proved how loved he was. Venue, catering, open bar, photographer, live band, custom invitations, rehearsal dinner, floral arrangements large enough to have their own zip code, $80,000 for one day. But $47,000 to keep their daughter alive was apparently a personal finance problem. I did not reply right away. Instead, I took a screenshot. Of course I did. By then, my folder had become less of a habit and more of a witness. It held the things my family would eventually pretend had happened differently. The missed calls, the flower texts, the wedding photos, the visitor logs. And now, this. I added the message to the folder. Family. Then I put my head down on the table and cried in a way that made no sound. That was the night I finally understood something I had spent years avoiding. My parents were not confused. They were not busy. They were not unaware. They knew enough. They just chose what mattered. And it was not me. The next morning, I applied for a personal loan. The website asked for my annual income, employment history, monthly expenses, housing costs, purpose of the loan. I stared at that last field for a while. Purpose. Medical expenses. That sounded so clean. Sotkide. It did not say. Because my cells turned against me, and my father told me to try a bank. It did not say. Because the same family that bought chair covers and a raw bar cannot spare money for chemotherapy? It just said medical expenses. I submitted the application. Approved. 14% interest. I nearly laughed again. 14%. Cancer had found a way to charge overtime. I accepted because what choice did I have? Survival is not always brave. Sometimes, it is just clicking accept on terrible terms because the alternative is worse. The money landed in my account a few days later. I paid the most urgent bills first. Hospital, farmacie, oncology lab. I set up payment plans for the rest. I printed confirmation pages and filed them in a folder on my desk. Next to the hospital, paperwork, and medication schedule. There I was, running my illness like a small failing business. Cash flow, debt management, supply costs, staffing shortage. Very professional, very American. A week later, my mother called, not to ask about the bills, not to ask how I was recovering after treatment. She wanted to tell me Derek and Megan had received their wedding video. It's just beautiful, she said. Your father cried watching the vows. I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone, and looked at the bottle of anti-nausea pills beside the sink. My father cried watching vows. Good to know the man had working tear ducts. That's nice, I said. You should come over and watch it sometime. I almost asked, will there be footage of the daughter you told not to come? But I was tired. Chemo tired is different from regular tired. It does not sit on your shoulders. It gets into your bones and rearranges the furniture. So I said, maybe. She kept talking about the music. The cake. How lovely Megan looked. How proud Derek seemed. I made the right sounds at the right times until she was satisfied. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and checked my loan balance. $47,000. Plus interest. That number became part of my life. It shaped every choice. I worked when I could barely sit upright because missed income meant missed payments. I learned to compare medication prices at different pharmacies. I argued with insurance representatives until I knew their hold music by heart. I accepted grocery cards from the patient assistance office after Harper practically dragged me there. You are allowed to take help? She told me. I hate needing it. Everybody needs help. Not everybody gets it. She did not argue with that. She just sat beside me while I filled out the forms. That was the difference between help that saves you and help that costs you your dignity. Harper never made me perform gratitude. She never made me explain why I deserved support. She never acted like my illness was poorly timed. She showed up, and then she stayed. My family. Meanwhile, sans occasionnel texts. Hope you're hanging in there. Thinking positive thoughts. Let us know if you need anything. That last one always got me. Let us know if you need anything, is what people say when they want credit for offering help without the inconvenience of actually helping. I had let them know. I had told them I needed money for treatment. I had told them I was scared. I had told them enough. They simply did not like the answers. By the end of that month, the folder on my phone had grown heavy with proof. But something inside me had grown lighter. Not happy. Not healed. Just clear. I stopped expecting my parents to become different people. I stopped waiting for Derek to notice the empty chair beside me. I stopped explaining their behavior to myself in softer language. They were not overwhelmed. They were not bad at emotions. They were not doing their best. Their best had cost $80,000 and came with a champagne toast. My survival came with a loan agreement. And every month, when the payment came out of my account, I remembered exactly who had told me to borrow my way through cancer. The first loan payment came out of my account on a Tuesday morning. And I remember thinking it was strange how quietly money could disappear while your whole life was making noise. There was no dramatic music. No warning bell. Just a banking notification on my phone while I stood in my kitchen making toast I was not sure I could keep down. The amount hit my checking account. The balance dropped. And there it was. Proof that surviving cancer had a monthly subscription plan. I stared at the notification, laughed once, and then sat down because laughing too hard still made my ribs ache. That was the morning Harper knocked on my door with 2 grocery bags, a paper pharmacy bag, and the expression of a woman who had already decided she was coming in, whether I liked it or not. "You look terrible," she said. "Good morning to you." "Too. You're welcome." She stepped past me into the apartment and set the bags on the counter. I had known Harper from the hospital by then, but this was the first time she had come to my place without me asking. Actually, asking would be too generous. I had texted her the night before because I could not remember whether I had taken my anti-nausea medicine. And the message probably looked a little unhinged. Something like, "Did I take the white pill? Or did I only think about taking the white pill?" Very elegant. Very adult. Harper had replied, "Send me a picture of the bottle." Then, "Are you alone?" Then, "Of course you are." Now here she was, opening my refrigerator like she paid rent. "You have mustard, half a lemon, and something in a container that has lost its legal right to be called food," she said. "I've been busy." "You've been sick?" "I can be 2 things." She looked over her shoulder. "Yes. And right now one of those things needs soup." That was Harper. Direct. Practical. Allergic to nonsense. She did not float into my life with speeches about hope or strength. She came with saltines, gingate, electrolyte drinks, and the kind of chicken noodle soup that tasted like somebody's grandmother had supervised it. She lined everything up on my counter, like she was preparing a tiny medical command center. "This goes by your bed? This one stays in the bathroom. This you take before you feel sick. Not after. You keep waiting until the nausea is already driving the bus." I don't like taking too much medication. And I don't like watching smart people suffer because they're trying to win a manners contest with their own digestive system. I wanted to argue, but I was tired. And she was right. Annoyingly right. The worst kind. Before Harper, I had turned surviving into a private job. I tracked appointments, pills, bills, side effects, work deadlines, insurance calls, and grocery lists. I told myself I was managing. In reality, I was one bad fever away from becoming a cautionary tale. Harper saw that faster than I did. She started with small things. She helped me set alarms for my medications. She wrote the emergency temperature number on a sticky note and put it on my fridge. She made me fill out paperwork for a patient transportation program at the hospital. Because driving myself after chemo was apparently not the brave, independent choice, I had convinced myself it was. "It's not independence if it puts you in danger," she said. I hate that sentence. You can hate it and still learn from it. She also made me join the support group she ran on Wednesday evenings. I did not want to go. My exact words were, "I am not sitting in a circle with strangers talking about my feelings under fluorescent lights." Harper said, "Great. Then come sit in a circle with strangers and say nothing." That was how she got me. She never demanded the performance. She just opened the door and let me decide whether to walk through it. The first meeting was held in a conference room near the oncology wing. There were folding chairs, a coffee urn, a tray of cookies, and a box of tissues placed in the center of the table like a warning. I nearly turned around. Harper saw me hesitate. "You can leave any time," she said. "Promise?" "Promise." So I stayed. There was a retired school principal named Elaine who wore bright scarves and had no patience for fake positivity. There was a man named Robert who was being treated for colon cancer and still managed to complain about hospital coffee like it was his civic duty. There was a young mother named Tasha who brought a notebook full of questions to every meeting. Nobody tried to be inspiring. That helped. When it was my turn to introduce myself, I said, "I'm Camille. Stage 3 breast cancer. Graphic designer. Currently losing arguments with crackers." Robert lifted his coffee cup. "Crackers are sneaky." And just like that, I breathed a little easier. I did not tell them about my family that first night. I did not tell them that my parents were busy with wedding thank you notes while I was calculating medical debt. I did not tell them that I had a folder on my phone full of proof that the people who raised me had treated my illness like bad timing. But I listened. I listened to Elaine talk about her daughter driving in from Connecticut every Friday. I listened to Robert talk about his church friends taking turns bringing meals. I listened to Tasha talk about her husband shaving his head when her hair started falling out, even though she said he had a peanut head and should not have done that to the public. People laughed. Real laughter. Tired laughter. But real. On the way out, Harper walked beside me to the elevator. Well, I did not hate it. High praise. Do not let it go to your head. She grinned. Too late. Over the next few weeks, Harper became woven into my life in ways I did not notice at first. She sent reminders before appointments. She checked in after infusions. She taught me which questions to ask Dr. Patterson and which side effects not to downplay. She told me to stop apologizing to nurses for needing help. They work in a hospital. Camille, you are not ruining the theme. When my hair started coming out faster, she was the one I texted. I had woken up to strands on my pillow, in my sink, on the collar of my sweatshirt. I stood in the bathroom, holding a clump of blonde hair in my hand, feeling foolishly heartbroken. It was hair. Just hair. That was what everyone said. But it did not feel like just hair when it was yours. When it was leaving before you were ready. Harper came over that evening with clippers. She did not push. She put them on the counter and said, "You're in charge." I looked at myself in the mirror. Thin patches. Tired eyes. A face I recognized and did not recognize. I don't want cancer to take it one handful at a time. I said, "Then we take control of this part." She covered my shoulders with a towel. Her hands were gentle, but she did not make a big sad ceremony out of it. No dramatic countdown. No speech about beauty coming from within. Thank God. I might have thrown the clippers at her. She simply turned them on and asked, "Ready?" I nodded. When the first strip of hair fell, I cried. Harper kept one hand on my shoulder. "You're still you," she said. "I look like a tired cue ball. You look like a woman who needs better lighting." That made me laugh while crying, which is not attractive, but it is honest. Afterward, she made tea while I sat on the couch wearing a soft knit cap. She swept the floor without asking. She ordered Thai food because she claimed soup alone was not a personality. I could only eat a few bites, but she counted that as a win. That night, when my mother texted a photo of Derek and Megan opening wedding gifts, I did not answer. I showed Harper instead. She looked at the screen, then at me. "Do you want comfort or honesty?" "Honesty." "That is garbage behavior." I laughed so hard I had to hold my stomach. It felt good to hear someone say it plainly. Not, "They're overwhelmed." Not, "They love you in their own way." Not, "Family is complicated." Just garbage behavior. Clean. Accurate. Refreshing. The worst night came after my 4th treatment. Dr. Patterson had warned me the effects could build, each round harder than the last. I believed her in the abstract. The way you believe weather reports until the storm actually takes out a tree. That night, the storm hit. I woke a little after 2 in the morning, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. My stomach cramped. My skin felt too hot and too cold at the same time. I tried to stand and nearly went down beside the bed. Somehow I made it to the bathroom, where I got sick until there was nothing left. And then my body kept trying anyway, because apparently it had a strong work ethic. I called my mother first. I hate admitting that, but it is true. The phone rang and rang. Voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. At 3:15, I texted Harper. "I think I need help." She called immediately. "Temperature?" "I don't know. Can you check?" I crawled to the sink, grabbed the thermometer, and fumbled with it. 100.8. I whispered, "I'm coming. If it goes higher, we call the on-call line. Unlock your door if you can." "I'm sorry." "Do not apologize." Unlock the door. She arrived 40 minutes later in scrubs. Her hair pulled back. No makeup. No hesitation. She found me on the bathroom floor and lowered herself beside me, like that was exactly where she had planned to spend her early morning. She checked my temperature again. She called the on-call nurse. She got me sipping fluids. She held back what was left of my hair while I got sick. She changed the towel under my head and stayed until the shaking eased. She did not look disgusted. She did not look inconvenienced. She did not make me feel like a burden. Just before sunrise, she sat against the bathroom cabinet with her legs stretched out, looking exhausted. "You should sleep?" I mumbled. "So should you." "I'm on the floor." I noticed. Bold design choice. I gave a weak laugh. That morning, my mother called at 10:23. "Sweetie, you called last night," she said. I had my phone on silent. Megan and I were at the spa. Post-wedding stress relief. You know how it is. I looked at Harper, who was standing in my kitchen making tea. "What did you need?" my mother asked. For 1 second, I considered telling her. I considered describing the fever, the vomiting, the fear, the bathroom floor, the woman who had shown up when my own mother had not. Then I looked at Harper again. Family was not a title. It was an action. "Nothing, Mom," I said. "It was nothing." After we hung up, Harper handed me a mug. "That was not nothing," she said. I know. And I did know. That was the morning I stopped confusing relatives with family. Harper did not replace what my parents should have been. Nobody can fully replace that. There is a particular grief in realizing your mother may never mother you, and your father may never protect you. That grief does not vanish because someone kind walks in with soup, but kindness still matters. Showing up matters. By the end of my treatment, Harper had become the person listed as my emergency contact. She was the person who knew my medication schedule, my scan dates, the foods I could tolerate, the jokes that would make me laugh when I looked like I had been assembled incorrectly. She was there when I rang the little bell after my last chemo session. I almost did not want to ring it. It felt too cheerful for something that had nearly destroyed me. But Harper stood beside me and said, "Ring the bell? Camille, you earned the noise." So I did. The sound echoed through the infusion center, bright and sharp. Rita clapped. Elaine from support group hugged me. Robert lifted a paper cup of terrible coffee in my direction, like it was champagne. And Harper cried, not loudly, not dramatically, just one hand over her mouth, eyes shining. My blood family missed all of it. But my real family was standing right there. The bell stopped ringing, but my hand kept shaking long after the sound faded. I smiled for Rita. I smiled for Elaine. I smiled for Robert, who raised that paper cup of awful hospital coffee, like we were at a wedding reception with better lighting and worse snacks. I even smiled for Harper, who pulled me into a hug so careful it made me want to cry harder. But when I got home that afternoon, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. I had finished chemotherapy. That should have felt like victory. And part of it did. I was grateful. I was alive. My doctors were cautiously optimistic, which is doctor language for, "We are not throwing a parade yet, but we are no longer whispering in the hallway." Still, nobody tells you how strange it feels when active treatment ends. For months, my life had been ruled by appointments, blood work, infusion days, medication alarms, insurance calls, and side effects. There was always a next thing. Next scan, next chemo, next prescription, next bill, next morning to survive. Then suddenly, there was space. And in that space came fear. What if it came back? What if the treatment had not worked? What if one normal headache meant something terrible? What if every ache, every twinge, every weird pain was my body quietly betraying me again? Cancer does not leave the room just because treatment ends. It stands in the corner for a while, tapping its watch. The first few weeks after chemo, I moved slowly. My energy came back in tiny, insulting amounts. One day I could walk around the block. The next day, taking out the trash felt like I was preparing for a triathlon nobody had trained me for. My hair began growing back in soft, uneven fuzz. It came in darker than before, which felt rude. Even my hair had gone through a personality change. I went back to work part-time at first. Victor, my boss, handled it better than most people handle a lunch order. "You work when you can," he said. "You rest when you need to. We will adjust. I don't want special treatment. He gave me a look over his reading glasses. Camille? You just finished chemotherapy. This is not special treatment. This is basic human decency. I realize corporate America has made that confusing. That was Victor. Dry, calm, and allergic to nonsense in a way I deeply respected. The agency had changed while I was gone. But not completely. Same exposed brick walls. Same overpriced espresso machine. Same people using the word disruptive to describe things that were, at best, mildly different. I walked in wearing a knit cap and a blazer that hung looser than it used to. And for one awful second, everyone got quiet. I hated that. Then one of the junior designers, Maya, walked over and said, "The client chose the worst logo option while you were gone. We need you." And somehow, that made everything feel normal again. Work became one of the ways I returned to myself. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic new woman way. More like one file. One meeting. One design review at a time. I remembered that I was good at something besides being a patient. I remembered that my brain could still solve problems that did not involve medication, side effects, or insurance codes. A few months later, Victor called me into his office. I assumed it was about a client presentation. I brought my laptop, a notebook, and the defensive attitude of someone who had survived too many revision rounds. He shut the door and said, "I want to promote you." I stared at him. "What?" "Art director." I actually looked behind me. Like maybe there was another Camille standing there with better eyebrows and a stronger immune system. "Are you serious?" "No." I often invite employees into my office to emotionally confuse them for fun. I sat down slowly. "Victor, I was gone for months." "Yes." "I worked half days for a while." "Yes." "I still have follow-up appointments." "Yes." "And you also led the Harrow campaign from your couch while nauseated. Caught 3 major brand inconsistencies. Nobody else saw? And somehow talked a client out of using neon green in a financial services identity. That last one alone deserves hazard pay?" I laughed because if I did not, I might cry. "You're talented," he said. Softer now. "Talent is worth waiting for. No speech. No pity. No making me feel like a charity case. Just recognition." I accepted the promotion. Then I went to the restroom, locked myself in a stall, and cried quietly for exactly 3 minutes. Because I had a meeting at 11, and cancer had already stolen enough of my schedule. My family did not know about the promotion. Or if they did, it was because my mother saw it on LinkedIn and forgot to mention it. By then, our communication had shrunk into almost nothing. A birthday text. A holiday message. My mother sometimes sent a little heart or a praying hands emoji, which I ignored because I had no idea what to do with digital concern from a woman who had missed the real-life version. My father did not call. Derek did not call. Megan sent a polite, "Hope you're doing well," around Christmas. I answered with "Thank you. Same to you." Which is what you write when the relationship has all the warmth of a customer service email. I did not block them. I did not make an announcement. I did not send a long message explaining my pain. Mostly because I had already explained enough, and they had chosen not to hear it. I simply stepped back. Silence. I discovered can be a boundary. The first big scan after treatment nearly broke me. Dr. Patterson had warned me scan anxiety was common. Common did not make it easier. Common just meant a lot of people were quietly losing their minds in hospital parking lots. Harper went with me. She brought coffee for herself and peppermint tea for me. Because even months later, the smell of hospital coffee made my stomach consider legal action. In the waiting room, I kept bouncing my knee. Harper put a hand on it. "You're shaking the whole row." "Sorry." "I didn't say stop. I'm just reporting local conditions." I laughed. Barely. The scan itself was not painful. Just cold and clinical and too quiet. Afterward came the waiting. That was the worst part. Waiting turns every thought into a courtroom argument. One side says you are fine. The other side brings exhibits. When Dr. Patterson finally walked in, she sat down across from me with a small smile. "No evidence of disease?" For a second, I did not understand the words. Then I did. No evidence of disease. Not cured forever. Not guaranteed. Not a magic shield. But clear. Clean. A breath I had not realized I was still holding. I covered my face with both hands. Harper squeezed my shoulder. Doctor. Patterson let me cry. Doctors who understand silence are underrated. When I left the hospital, I did not go home right away. I drove to a parking garage nearby, parked on the 3rd level, and cried for almost an hour. Not pretty tears. Not movie tears. The kind where your face gets blotchy and you make sounds you would deny under oath. It was not just happiness. It was release. All the fear I had swallowed. All the nights on the bathroom floor. All the times I had told people I was fine because the truth was too heavy to hand to someone who would only drop it. All of it came out in that gray concrete parking garage while someone's car alarm went off 2 rows over. Very healing. Very Boston. A year after remission, I moved. My Somerville apartment had carried me through the worst part of my life, and I was grateful for it. But every corner remembered something. The bathroom floor. The kitchen table with the bills. The bedroom where I counted pills and watched hair gather on my pillow. I needed a place that knew me as someone alive. So I sold what little I could, saved what I had, and bought a small condo in Beacon Hill. It was not huge. It was not fancy in the way rich people use that word. But it had good light, hardwood floors, and a window that overlooked the Charles River. If you stood at the right angle and did not mind leaning a little, my monstera came with me. The plant had survived neglect, overwatering, underwatering, chemotherapy, and my emotional support playlists. At that point, leaving it behind would have felt disrespectful. The first night in the new condo, Harper came over with takeout and a bottle of sparkling cider because I still did not drink much alcohol. We sat on the floor because my couch had not arrived yet. To new beginnings, she said, raising her plastic cup. To furniture delivery windows that make sense. I said, dream bigger. Camille. I survived cancer. I am allowed to be realistic. We clinked cups. For my 1-year remission anniversary, I bought myself a navy cashmere scarf. It was absurdly expensive. I stood in the store for 20 minutes, touching it, checking the price tag, putting it back, picking it up again, doing the full middle-class guilt dance. Then I bought it, not because I needed it, because I had spent so long paying for survival that I wanted to buy something soft for the woman who had survived. I wore it out of the store even though it was barely cold enough. Let people judge. People wear stranger things in Boston and call it fashion. Life kept building. Thursday dinners with Harper continued. She had become less like a friend, and more like the person who knew where all the emotional bodies were buried. We talked about work, dating, doctors, bills, bad television, and whether my growing hair was becoming curly or simply confused. I started cooking more. Salmon, roasted vegetables, soups that did not come from a hospital support program. I learned to make food because I wanted to nourish myself, not because nausea had handed me a list of rules. I went on walks along the river. I said yes to invitations. Sometimes I said no without explaining. That felt almost illegal at first. Then wonderful. 2 years after my diagnosis. Doctor. Patterson said the word again. Still clear. I walked out of her office lighter than I had entered. I was 30 now. Cancer-free. Promoted. Living in a condo I paid for myself. Carrying debt. Yes. But also carrying peace. Not perfect peace. Not greeting card peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing you can survive what you were sure would destroy you. My family had missed the whole transformation. They missed the bell. The scans. The promotions. The move. The first tiny curls of new hair. The nights I laughed again and meant it. They missed the woman I became. And for the first time in my life, I was not sure they deserved to know her. I was standing in my kitchen, seasoning salmon, like a woman who had finally learned the difference between feeding herself and merely staying alive. When my phone lit up with a name I had not seen in a long time. Dad. The pan hissed softly on the stove. The smell of lemon, garlic, and roasted vegetables filled the condo. Outside my Beacon Hill window, The sky was turning that pale evening gray. Boston does so well. Like even the weather had student loans. I stared at the phone. For 2 years. My father had barely contacted me. A birthday text once. A stiff holiday message. Nothing about my remission. Nothing about my scans. Nothing about whether I still had hair. Strength. Insurance. Or a pulse. And now there he was, calling. My first instinct was to let it go to voicemail. That had become one of my favorite adult skills. Not every ring is a command. Not every emergency is yours. Some phones can buzz all they want and still be wrong. But curiosity is a very nosy little thing. I turned down the burner and answered, "Hello, Camille." His voice sounded different. That was the first thing I noticed. Not soft exactly. My father did not do soft, but thinner. Less certain. The old authority was still there, but it had cracks around the edges. "Dad," I said. There was a pause. Like he had expected me to fill the silence with concern. Old Camille would have. Old Camille would have rushed in, asking what was wrong, trying to prove she was still a good daughter. I waited. "I need to see you," he said. No greeting. No, "How have you been?" No, "I know it has been a long time." Just the need. Placed on the table like a bill. "What is going on?" Another pause. In the background, I heard my mother's voice. Muffled and anxious. She said something I could not make out. My father cleared his throat. "I have been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease." The kitchen seemed to go still around me. Parkinson's. I knew the word. Of course. Everyone does. But knowing a word and hearing it attached to your father are two different things. My father had always seemed carved out of stubbornness and black coffee. He was the man who stood at the head of every table, made every decision, controlled every room. The idea of his body refusing to obey him felt almost impossible. "Early stage," he continued. "That is what the doctors say. But it will progress." The salmon was starting to burn. I did not move. "I am sorry to hear that," I said, because I was not in the simple way people might expect. My feelings about my father were not a clean drawer. They were a junk drawer full of old batteries, receipts, and one suspicious key nobody could identify. "I need my family around me right now," he said. There it was. Family. That word always arrived dressed like love and carrying a clipboard. "We are having dinner Sunday," he continued. "Your mother? Derek. Megan. I want you there. We need to discuss the future." The future. I almost laughed. For 2 years, I had been building one without him. Scan by scan. Payment by payment. Promotion by promotion. Meal by meal. And now, because his body had started betraying him, he wanted to discuss the future, like I was still listed as family property. "What time?" I asked. 6. "I'll be there." The words came out before I fully understood why I said them. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen until the smoke alarm gave one sharp beep, which felt judgmental but fair. I turned off the stove and looked down at the salmon, now dry around the edges. "Well?" I said to nobody. That went beautifully. I did not eat much that night. Instead, I sat at my small dining table with my laptop open and searched Parkinson's disease. Early symptoms, progression, treatment, long-term care, medication schedules, home safety, caregiver support. I had become good at research during cancer. Maybe too good. Illness teaches you that knowledge can be calming right up until it starts punching you in the face. Parkinson's was not simple. Tremors, stiffness, balance problems, slower movement, speech changes, fatigue. Eventually, for some people, help with dressing, meals, medication, transportation, daily routines. A life that slowly asks more and more from whoever is nearby. Nearby. That was when I understood why he had called me. Not because he missed me. Not because my cancer had finally haunted him into apology. Not because he wanted to know the woman I had become. He needed someone, and in the Atwood family math, I had always been the obvious answer. Derek had a wife. Derek had a baby on the way. Derek had a career. Everyone treated like a national asset. Derek had responsibilities, which meant his life was protected by a velvet rope. I was single. No children. Flexible job. Strong. Independent. All those words people use when they want to admire your resilience right before exploiting it. I called Harper. She answered on the second ring. Please tell me you did not burn the salmon again. I burned the salmon because my father called. That man has range. I sat back in my chair. He has Parkinson's. The line went quiet. Oh, Cam. Early stage. He wants me at dinner Sunday to discuss the future. Harper did not answer right away. That was one of the things I trusted about her. She did not rush into advice just to hear herself being wise. What do you think they want? She asked. I think they want me to move back home and take care of him. Do they know you are still recovering from the last 2 years of your life? They would have to ask something about my life first. She sighed. Are you going? Yes. Why? I looked toward the window. The reflection showed me sitting in my own condo, wearing a soft sweater, my hair grown back shorter and darker, my face stronger than I remembered, because I need to hear them say it. I said, I need them to look me in the eye and ask me to give up the life I built after they abandoned me. And then? Then I say no. The word sat between us. No. It used to feel dangerous. Now it felt like a locked door I had installed myself. Harper's voice softened. Bring the folder. I knew which folder she meant. Family. I do not want to go there looking for a fight. You are not bringing it to fight. You are bringing it so they cannot make you doubt yourself. That landed. Because they would try. Maybe not with open cruelty. The Atwoods were too polished for that. They would use duty. Guilt. Tradition. Family loyalty. My mother would soften her voice. Derek would talk about stress. My father would act like the conversation had already been decided. They would not say, Camille, please sacrifice your life, because we do not want to sacrifice ours. They would say, this makes the most sense. That was how selfish people dressed up their convenience. After I hung up, I opened the folder for the first time in months, the screen filled with old pain, the call log from the morning of my diagnosis, my father's 2-minute conversation, my mother's flower messages, the text where I told her I was starting chemo, and she asked about roses, the screenshot of my father refusing help with medical bills because Derek's wedding had drained their generosity, the wedding photos, the caption about the happiest day of our family's life, the hospital visitor logs, official and cold, showing date after date with the same word in the visitor column. Non, non, non. I scrolled slowly. Not because I wanted to suffer, but because I needed to remember accurately. Pain can blur over time. Survival can make you generous in dangerous ways. You start thinking maybe it was not that bad. Maybe they were overwhelmed. Maybe you should have asked differently. Maybe you are being harsh. Documents are useful when your heart gets sentimental and stupid. Sunday arrived faster than I wanted. I spent the afternoon choosing what to wear. Which sounds shallow unless you have ever walked back into a house where you were taught to disappear. Clothing can be armor. Mine was simple. Black slacks. Cream silk blouse. Low heels. The navy cashmere scarf I had bought for myself after remission. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman my family had not earned access to. Harper texted, as I was putting on earrings. Remember, you do not owe them anything. Not a single thing. I typed back, I know. Then I paused and added, but, remind me again in about an hour. Her reply came immediately. Gladly. The drive to Newton took about 40 minutes. The closer I got, the more my chest tightened. Familiar streets passed by. The pharmacy where my mother used to buy holiday cards. The church where Derek had once sung terribly in a Christmas program and still received a standing ovation from our parents. The old bakery where my father bought pies for Thanksgiving and then acted like he had personally harvested the apples. My parents' house looked exactly the same. White colonial. Black shutters. Manicured lawn. Brick walkway. 3 stories of polished respectability. The kind of house that told neighbors everything was fine. Whether or not anyone inside was lonely, I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment. Warm light glowed from the dining room windows. Shadows moved inside. My mother setting the table, probably with the good china. My father at the head of the table? Even now. Derek arriving with Megan, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. Everyone gathering to decide what my life should become. I touched the scarf at my neck. Soft. Real. Mine. Then I grabbed my purse. My phone was inside it. Charged. Folder ready. The brick path felt longer than I remembered. When I rang the doorbell, the same 3 notes echoed through the house. I had heard that chime my whole life. As a child coming in from school. As a teenager returning from art club. As a daughter hoping one day the door would open to people who saw her clearly. My mother answered. Camille? She looked older. Or maybe I was finally looking without trying to please her. Her face shifted through several emotions before settling on relief. The kind people show when the person they need has arrived. You look wonderful, she said, pulling me into a hug before I could decide whether I wanted one. She smelled like Chanel No. 5 and roast lamb. Thank you, I said. She held me a second too long, then stepped back. Come in. Everyone is here. Of course they were. I walked into the house. The entryway had not changed. Same polished table. Same framed family photos. Same mirror above the console, where I used to check my face before dinners, making sure I looked calm enough not to cause questions. As I passed the wall of photographs, I noticed something I had somehow missed as a girl. Derek was everywhere. Derek's graduation. Derek's engagement. Derek in a cap and gown. Derek and Megan smiling on a beach. Derek's wedding photo in a silver frame. My photos stopped around high school. There I was, at 18. Frozen in a prom dress. Smiling. Like a girl still waiting to be chosen. I almost laughed. Even the wall had moved on without me. In the dining room, Derek stood when he saw me. Cam. He came around the table with his arms open. He let him how me. It was stiff. Quick. And mostly decorative. You look great, he said. So I keep hearing. His eyes flicked to my hair. Then away. He had the sense not to comment. Megan sat beside him. Visibly pregnant. One hand on her belly. She gave me a polite smile. But her eyes were careful. Watching. Measuring. She looked like someone who had been hearing one version of the family story and was not entirely convinced it was the complete edition. Then I saw my father. He sat at the head of the table, where he had always sat. But he looked smaller somehow. Not weak. Exactly. Reduced. His left hand trembled against the white tablecloth, and he tried to cover it with his right. I noticed. He noticed me noticing. Sit down. Camille, he said. Still a command. But it did not land the way it used to. I pulled out the chair across from Derek and set my purse beside my feet. Inside it, my phone waited. I looked around at all of them. My mother hovering near the sideboard. Derek avoiding my eyes. Megan silent and watchful. My father gripping the edge of the table like the room was already slipping out of his control. Dinner had not even started, and I already knew exactly why I had been invited. My mother carried in the lamb, like a woman presenting evidence that everything was still normal. That was her specialty. Roast something. Polish something. Light a candle. And pretend the foundation was not cracking underneath the house. The dining room looked exactly as it always had for important family meals. Good china. Cloth napkins. Waterford crystal. Silver flatware that had to be hand-washed because heaven forbid a fork experience a dishwasher like the rest of us. I took my seat and placed my purse beside my chair. Close enough that my ankle brushed against it. My phone was inside. So was the folder? My father watched me from the head of the table. His left hand trembled again. And this time he trapped it beneath his right palm. I might have felt sorry for him if the room had not already been arranged, like a courtroom, where everyone expected me to plead guilty to independence. For the first part of dinner, nobody said much. My mother asked if I wanted more potatoes. Derek asked if traffic from Boston had been bad. Megan said the green beans were good, which was brave, considering they tasted like they had been cooked by someone afraid of seasoning. I answered politely. Not warmly, politely. There is a difference. Polite is what you give people when you are not ready to hand them your softness. My father barely ate. He cut the lamb into small pieces. then pushed them around his plate. Twice. His fork slipped. He frowned each time, as if the silverware had personally betrayed him. Derek noticed too, but he looked away. That was the Atwood family method. If something was unpleasant, look at the wallpaper until somebody else handled it. When the plates were cleared, my mother brought coffee into the dining room. Nobody asked if I wanted dessert. That was probably wise. There are only so many traditions. One woman can survive in a single evening. My father placed both hands on the table and cleared his throat. There it was. The meeting. I will get right to it, he said. Of course he would. My father had never treated emotional damage as something worth warming up before serving. You all know about my diagnosis. Parkinson's. Early stage, but progressive. The doctors have been clear that I will need increasing assistance. My mother lowered her eyes. Derek folded his hands in front of him like he was attending a business presentation. Megan leaned back slightly, one hand resting on her belly, her face unreadable. My father continued. Your mother and I have discussed the practical needs. Medication management, transportation, meals, help around the house, eventually, more personal care. I kept my face still. The old Camille would have filled the silence. She would have said, I'm so sorry. Dad. She would have asked what she could do. She would have rushed into the empty space and made herself useful before anyone had to ask. I did not move. My father looked directly at me. We believe the best arrangement is for you to move back home. There it was. Not a request. En arrangement? My mother reached for her coffee cup but did not drink. Derek stared at the table. I waited. My father seemed irritated that I had not immediately nodded. You work in design? He said. You can do much of that remotely. Correct? Sometimes. I said, you do not have children. You are not married. Your old room is available. Your mother has already started clearing it out. My mother gave me a small, hopeful smile, like she had done me a favor by preparing the room where I had once learned how little space I was allowed to take. It makes the most sense. Derek added. I turned my eyes to him. He shifted. I mean, with the baby coming. Megan needs me. Work has been insane. I have responsibilities. Responsibilities. That word had always fascinated me. In our family, Derek's responsibilities protected him. Mine obligated me. Megan said nothing, but her jaw tightened. I noticed. My father leaned back with effort. This is what families do. We take care of one another. For a second, I just looked at him, at his trembling hand, at my mother's anxious face, at Derek's clean shirt and soft hands, at the room full of family photographs that had quietly edited me out after high school. Then I smiled. Not because anything was funny, because the nerve of it was almost impressive. You want me to move back here? I said, leave my condo, adjust my work, and become your caregiver. My father's mouth tightened. You make it sound unpleasant? Is it supposed to sound like a vacation? Camille, my mother said softly. Your father needs you. I turned to her. Did you need me to understand the request? Or did you need me to feel guilty enough not to ask questions? Her face flushed. Derek sighed. Come on. Come. Don't make this harder than it has to be. That line. Again. I looked at him slowly. You know, people in this family say that whenever they are asking me to swallow something sharp, he blinked. My father's voice hardened. You have a duty to this family. Duty. The word landed on the table between us. Heavy and old. For a moment, I felt it. The pressure. The training. The invisible hand on the back of my neck pushing me toward obedience. My father had built that reflex in me over decades. He did not have to yell. He only had to look disappointed. And my nervous system started packing a bag. But I was not that girl anymore. That girl had been left on a hospital bench with stage 3 cancer and a dead phone call. I took a breath. Before I answer, I said, I want to ask you something. My father looked annoyed. This is not the time for games. It is not a game. The room went still. When was the last time you asked how I was doing? My mother blinked. Derek frowned. My father stared at me, like I had spoken in a language he did not respect. What? When was the last time you asked about my health? I said. About my scans? About whether I was still in remission? About whether I was even alive? Silence. It spread across the table slowly, touching each of them. My mother set her cup down carefully. Camille, that is not fair. No. Mom. What was not fair was being 28 years old with stage 3 cancer, and realizing my family had more energy for wedding centerpieces than chemotherapy. Derek's face changed. Megan looked from him to me. My father shifted in his chair. We are not here to relitigate the past. I said. That surprised even me a little. But once the words came out, I knew they were true. You are asking me for my future. I continued. So, yes, we are absolutely going to discuss the past. My father's jaw worked. He hated losing control of a room. I could see it in the way his shoulders stiffened, in the way he tried to make his voice lower and more final. You had an illness? He said. You handled it? I laughed once. Quietly. An illness. That is a cute way to say cancer. His face reddened. I had stage 3 breast cancer. I said. 6 months of chemotherapy. 36 hospital visits. Blood work. Scans. Port appointments. Emergency calls. I lost my hair. I lost weight. I lost sleep. I lost any illusion that this family would show up for me. My mother pressed a hand to her mouth. Derek whispered. 36? Yes. I said, looking at him. 36. He swallowed. I did not know it was that many. You did not ask? That shut him up. My father pushed back slightly from the table. We were under tremendous stress at the time. The wedding. I said. His eyes flashed. It was an important family event. So was my cancer? The words landed hard. For once, nobody rushed to fill the silence. I reached down and picked up my purse. My mother's eyes followed the movement. Derek looked confused. Megan looked alert. I placed my phone on the table. I knew this might happen someday. I said, not this exact dinner. Not Parkinson's. But this kind of conversation. The kind where all of you act like I owe this family something while pretending not to remember what this family gave me when I needed help. Camille, my mother whispered. No, you are going to hear this. I unlocked the phone and opened the folder. Family. The screen glowed against the polished mahogany table. I started keeping records because chemo brain is real. I said. That is what I told myself at first. I was scared I would forget appointments or instructions. But somewhere deep down, I think I knew I would need proof. Because families like ours rewrite history very politely. Megan's eyes moved to Derek. I opened the first screenshot. This is the call log from the morning I was diagnosed. I called Dad from the hospital hallway. The call lasted 2 minutes and 31 seconds. That was how long it took him to tell me he and Mom could not deal with my cancer, because Derek's wedding was in 4 months. My father's face went pale. I did not say it like that. Yes. I said. You did. I swiped to the next image. This is the text I sent Mom on my first chemo day. Starting chemo today. I'm scared. She answered 6 hours later, asking whether Megan should use peonies or roses. My mother began to cry, softly at first. I did not understand how serious it was. She said. I looked at her. Mom. I used the word chemotherapy. That was not a riddle. Derek took the phone. His hand tense. He scrolled without asking. Then froze. I knew what he was looking at. The lone message. I let him read it. His voice came out lower. Dad. She asked you for help with medical bills? My father said nothing. Derek looked up. You told her to get a personal loan? There were expenses. My father said. The wedding? I said again. His eyes snapped toward me. Your brother's wedding had already been paid for. Yes. $80,000. Megan inhaled sharply. Derek's face went gray. You told Aunt Linda. I said to him. At the rehearsal dinner. You were proud of it. $80,000 for one day. Meanwhile, I owed $47,000 to stay alive. Megan turned toward Derek. You knew she needed money? I did not know. He said quickly. I believed him. Partly. Derek had made a career out of not knowing anything that might make him responsible. I took the phone back and opened the visitor log. This is official hospital documentation. Every infusion. Every visit. Every time someone came to see me. If someone came to see me, I slid the phone to the center of the table. Look at the visitor column. My mother reached for it with trembling fingers. She scrolled. Non. Non. Nonne. Her crying changed then. It became quieter. Heavier. Less polished. Derek leaned over to see. Megan read over his shoulder. And this time her expression was not unreadable. It was anger. Not loud anger. Worse. Clear anger. 36 visits. I said, "Not one of you came. Not one." My father stared at the table. My mother whispered, "I should have known." "You did know enough." I said, "You knew I had cancer. You knew I was in treatment. You knew I called at 2 in the morning and you did not answer because you were at the spa with Megan recovering from wedding stress." Megan flinched. "I did not know that," she said quietly. "I know." I said, "This is not about you." Derek rubbed both hands over his face. My father finally spoke. And his voice was rough. "What do you want from us? An apology?" "No," I said. That seemed to confuse him. "I am not here begging for an apology. I am not here trying to make you love me retroactively. I brought this because you asked me to sacrifice my life for a family that could not sacrifice an afternoon for me." My mother sobbed once. I looked at my father. "You said I have a duty to this family. So, I want you to explain something to me. Where was that duty when I was sick? Where was family when I was driving myself home after chemo? Where was loyalty when I was lying on my bathroom floor at 2 in the morning? Calling Mom over and over while she ignored the phone? Where was love when you told me not to attend Derek's wedding because my illness might ruin the pictures?" Derek's head snapped toward my father. Megan stared at him. My father closed his eyes. So Derek had not known that part. "Good. Let the golden boy see the price of his shine," my mother whispered. "Richard." He opened his eyes and looked at me. And for the first time that evening, I saw something besides command in his face. Fear. Not just of Parkinson's. Of being seen clearly. I picked up my phone and slid it back into my purse. "I am cancer-free now," I said. 2 years in remission? I had another clear scan. I was promoted. I bought a condo. My hair grew back. My life grew back. And none of you knew because none of you asked. Nobody spoke. The chandelier hummed faintly above us. Somewhere in the kitchen, the refrigerator clicked on. Such ordinary sounds for a room where a family had finally run out of lies. I stood. My chair legs scraped against the floor. My father's voice came out smaller. "Camille?" I looked at him. He swallowed. His trembling hand pressed flat against the table. "What is your answer?" There it was. After everything, still the request. Still the expectation. Still the belief that my pain was background information. But his need was the main event. I picked up my purse and adjusted my navy scarf. "My answer," I said, "is coming." And this time, every single person at that table knew they were going to have to listen. I let the silence stretch just long enough for everyone at that table to feel how heavy their own expectations had become. My father looked smaller than he had when I walked in. Not weak exactly, but exposed. His left hand trembled against the tablecloth. And for once, he did not try to hide it. My mother sat with her napkin twisted in both hands. Derek stared at the floor like maybe the hardwood had answers. Megan was watching me. Not with pity, but with the kind of attention people give when they finally understand a room they married into. My father cleared his throat. "Camille," he said, and his voice cracked just a little. "I know things were not handled perfectly." I almost smiled. Not handled perfectly. That was such an Atwood way to describe abandonment. Like they had slightly overcooked dinner. Like they had forgotten to send a thank you card. Like my cancer had been an administrative error. "Not handled perfectly," I repeated. His face tightened. "I am trying to say I made mistakes. Mistakes are when you buy the wrong kind of milk." I said, "Mistakes are when you miss an exit on the highway." What happened to me was not a mistake. It was a choice. My mother made a small sound, but I did not look at her. If I looked too long, I might soften too soon. and I had not survived everything just to hand my spine back at the dinner table. My father leaned forward. I am sick now. I heard you. I am scared. I believe you. He blinked, as if he had expected me to argue with that. I was not going to. His fear was real. I could see it in his eyes, in his trembling hand, in the way his body had started taking away the control he had used as a weapon for most of his life. But his fear did not erase mine. It did not go back in time and sit beside me during chemo. It did not answer the phone at 2 in the morning. It did not pay one medical bill. It did not put a chair for me at Derek's wedding. My father swallowed hard. I need help, he said. I need my family. There it was again. Family? That word had done more unpaid labor in my life than any person I knew. I looked at him carefully. When you say family, Dad, what do you actually mean? He frowned. You know what I mean. No, I said. I really do not. Derek lifted his head. I continued, my voice calm. Do you mean people who show up when someone is sick? Because I had that? It was Harper. It was Rita. It was the people in my support group. It was my boss keeping my job open. It was not this table. My mother started crying again. Quietly, this time. Do you mean people who sacrifice? I asked. Because I sacrificed my comfort, my pride, my savings, my health, my hair, and years of financial stability to get through treatment. Derek sacrificed nothing. You all made sure of that. Derek flinched. Good. Not because I wanted to hurt him. Because truth should at least touch the people who benefited from the lie. My father's voice sharpened. But there was desperation under it now. Your brother has a child coming. And I had cancer? The room went still again. I turned to Derek. You have a wife? You have a baby coming. You have a job. I understand those are real responsibilities. But do not sit there and act like my life was empty just because nobody here bothered to value it. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, he chose silence wisely. My father's eyes filled with tears. I had never seen that before. Not when his own mother died. Not when Derek broke his collarbone falling off a bike. Not when I left for college with 2 suitcases, a loan package, and a smile I had practiced so I would not cry in the driveway. Richard Atwood did not cry, but now tears slipped down his face, and his trembling hand came up to wipe them away. Please, he said. I am begging you. My mother covered her mouth. Derek stared at him, stunned. I felt something inside me pull. It was not guilt. Not exactly. It was older than guilt. It was the little girl in the prom dress on the family photo wall, still hoping her father might look at her and finally see someone worth protecting. It was the teenager holding an art award in the school hallway, waiting for parents who never showed up. It was the 28-year-old woman on a hospital bench, crying into a phone while her father chose a wedding deposit over her terror. For a moment, all of them stood inside me at once. Then the 30-year-old woman I had become stepped forward. Dad, I said softly. He looked up, hope flashing across his face. That hope hurt to see. I hear you, I said. And I understand that you are scared. I would not wish that fear on anyone. His shoulders dropped, like he thought I was giving in. I was not. But 2 years ago, I called you from a hospital hallway. I told you I had stage 3 cancer. I told you I was terrified. I needed my father. He closed his eyes. You told me you could not deal with it right then because Derek was planning his wedding. My mother whispered, Camille. I raised one hand without looking at her. No. Let him hear it. My father opened his eyes again. Tears kept falling. I spent 6 months learning what your words meant. I said, I learned them in infusion chairs. I learned them on bathroom floors. I learned them every time I opened another bill. I learned them every time Mom sent me wedding updates while I was trying not to throw up. I learned them when you told me not to come to the wedding because my illness might take attention away from Derek. Derek's face twisted with shame. Megan looked down at her hands. So now, I said, I'm going to give you the only answer I can give without betraying the woman who survived all that. My father stared at me. I took a breath. I can't deal with this right now. 4 words. They landed harder than shouting ever could have. My mother gasped like I had slapped him. Derek's mouth opened. My father went completely still. I did not say it with cruelty. That mattered to me. I did not spit it. I did not smile like some villain in a cheap movie. I simply gave him back the sentence he had handed me, when my world was falling apart. A mirror does not create the face. It only shows it. My father's lips moved. But no sound came out. I picked up my purse. You have options. You can hire help. You can use the retirement fund you have spent years protecting, like it was a national monument. Derek can adjust his schedule. Mom can ask for support. You can talk to your doctors about home care. But I am not moving back here. Camille, please, my mother said, standing. No. Mom! She stopped. I am not your emergency plan. I am not the daughter you ignore until my usefulness becomes convenient. I am not giving up the life I rebuilt after you all disappeared from mine. My voice stayed steady, and that felt like its own miracle. Derek finally spoke. Cam, I did not know all of it. I believe that. I said, but you knew enough to let me be absent. You knew enough not to ask. That was still a choice. He looked away. Megan touched his arm, but her eyes remained on me. There was something in her expression that felt almost like respect. Or warning. Maybe she was seeing her own future if she ever became inconvenient. I turned toward the door. My mother followed me into the hallway. Please do not leave like this, she said. We love you. I stopped beside the wall of family photos. Derek in his cap and gown. Derek at his engagement party. Derek at his wedding. Me at 18. Frozen before the family story moved on without me. I looked back at her. Mom. Love is not something you claim after you have already failed the test. Her face crumpled. I am sorry, she whispered. I hope someday that means something. I said. But tonight it does not change my answer. I opened the front door. Cool air rushed in. Clean and sharp. My car sat in the driveway under the porch light. Behind me, I heard my father call my name once. Camille. I paused. The old command was gone. Only a frightened man remained. That was sad. Truly sad. But sadness is not an obligation. I stepped outside. My heels clicked on the brick pathway as I walked to my car. My mother came onto the porch, crying openly now. Derek stood behind her. One hand on the door frame. My father was still inside, seated at the head of the table that had ruled my childhood. Megan stood a little apart from all of them, one hand on her belly, watching me leave. I got into my car and closed the door. For a few seconds, I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel. I expected to feel triumphant. I did not. I felt tired, sad, clear, and underneath all of that, free. I started the engine and backed out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, my mother covered her face. Derek turned away. The porch light glowed over the white colonial house that had once taught me love, had to be earned. I drove back to Boston without turning on the radio. The city lights came into view. Familiar and steady. My cashmere scarf was soft against my neck. My phone buzzed once at a red light. Harper, you okay? I waited until I parked outside my building to answer. I said no. Then I added, but I will be. She replied immediately. That counts. And it did. 1 week later, my mother called. I almost let it go to voicemail. But curiosity won again. Some habits are stubborn little weeds. Camille, she said. Her voice sounded older. Derek has taken a leave from work. Your father needs more help than we expected. I looked out my window at the Charles River. I see. Megan is stressed. They are fighting. Derek is angry. Your father refuses to consider a full-time facility. None of that surprised me. When the person everyone protects finally has to carry weight, the whole family system starts making noise. I am sorry it is hard. I said, will you reconsider? No. The word came easier this time. My mother was quiet. Then she said, I understand. I did not know if she truly did. But I let the sentence sit there. 3 weeks later, she texted me an apology. A real one. No excuses. She wrote that she should have been there. She should have protected me. She had failed me. She was not asking for forgiveness. She just wanted me to know she finally saw it. I read the message several times. Then I wrote back. I appreciate you saying that. I am not ready to talk yet. But I hear you. Her answer came quickly. Whatever you need. Those words almost broke me more than the apology. Whatever you need. 4 words. Different words? Better ones. My father wrote a letter a few weeks after that. His handwriting was shaky, the letters uneven from the tremor. He admitted he had chosen Derek's happiness over my survival. He said he was not asking me to come back or forgive him. He said he saw the daughter he had pushed away, and the woman she had become without him. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I did not reply. But I did not throw it away either. 6 months later, I was still cancer-free. Dr. Patterson used the word thriving, which sounded suspiciously cheerful. But I decided not to argue with a medical professional giving me good news. I had been promoted again. This time, to creative director. My condo had better furniture. My monstera had become so large, it looked like it was considering paying rent. Harper was still my Thursday dinner. She had started dating Elena, a surgeon with a laugh loud enough to scare pigeons. I was seeing James, a high school history teacher with kind eyes and jokes, so bad they circled around to charming. He knew my story. He did not try to fix it. He just showed up, which remains the most underrated form of love. My father eventually accepted a part-time caregiver. Derek visited twice a week. My mother texted me sometimes. I answered when I wanted to. Not out of punishment, out of peace. That is the thing I want anyone listening to understand. Walking away is not always revenge. Sometimes it is recovery. Those 4 words I gave my father were not meant to destroy him. They were the truth. I could not deal with his crisis at the cost of my own life. Not then. Not anymore. Family is not proven by last names, holiday photos, or speeches at weddings. Family is proven in hospital rooms, late-night calls, grocery bags left on counters, rides to appointments, and people who do not disappear when your life becomes inconvenient. You are allowed to protect yourself from people who only remember you when they need something. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to accept an apology without handing over access to your life. And you are allowed to heal at your own pace, even if nobody claps for it. My name is Camille Atwood. I am 30 years old. I am a cancer survivor. I am a daughter. Yes. But I am also a person. That took me far too long to learn. Family is who shows up when it costs them something. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk out the door and keep walking. The lesson in Camille's story is not about revenge. It is about finally understanding the difference between love and obligation. Many people spend their whole lives trying to earn care from family members who only appear when they need something. But real family is not proven by blood, last names, holiday photos, or polite words. Real family is proven by action, especially when life becomes painful, inconvenient, or frightening. As we get older, this lesson becomes even more important. We may feel pressured to forgive quickly, sacrifice endlessly, or keep peace at the cost of our own health. But peace that requires you to disappear is not peace. It is self-abandonment. Camille's choice teaches us that boundaries are not cruelty. Saying no does not mean you have no heart. It means you have finally learned to protect the heart that others failed to protect. Forgiveness, if it comes, should come honestly, not because guilt forces it. The people who truly love you will show up before they need you. They will not wait until your strength benefits them. So choose carefully who gets access to your time, your care, and your life. Self-respect is not selfish. Sometimes, it is survival.